Imagine yourself, you're in a pitch black room and you're trying to find out one little switch. It's going to turn the light on, but wait a minute. The room is spinning at the same time. So that was the odds of this happening, of it being successful. And he said it was like that. It was just like a miracle that just happened in front of them, where they were able to get to the right spot to do that. And I mean, that was the first time where I actually saw not only the logical part, right, as a doctor, as a skill, but he also called it the medical miracle.
Before we dive in, a quick note. If you want weekly tools to grow and lead your business, sign up for my free newsletter at stevepreda.com/newsletter. Good day, dear listeners. Steve Preda here with the Management Blueprint podcast. And my guest today is Bauer, a leadership strategist who teaches leadership, performance, continuous improvement. She is also the CEO of Heartnomics Enterprises. And she is well-versed in Lean Six Sigma, Zig Ziglar, Baldrige Excellence, and many, many disciplines. So I'm excited to welcome you to the show, Hannah.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
All right. So you have lots of interesting stories and lots of interesting concepts and frameworks, which we are into. But I'm also interested in your personal why and how are you manifesting that in your coaching practice?
Well, my personal why is transformation. I believe that as human beings, we have the authority and ability to transform. And I believe the way that we do that is through love and excellence. We've all been created by love and the ability to do good works, excellent works, the ones that are going to leave a positive footprint. And that's my why. I want to be able to be fulfilled in what I do and help other people be fulfilled in the lives that they live.
Wow. So love, excellence, and fulfillment. That is a very positive vision. I'm happy to sign up for that.
Yeah. It is positive. It's true that, and I think that's the thing. It's like, we really can attain that in this lifetime. And sometimes we look at it like, oh, it's so far away or one day. But it's like, that's the amazing thing that we have as human beings. We have the ability to live that out regardless of what's going on.
Well, that's very significant for you to say that because it's part of your story that when you were 10 years old, and correct me with the details, you were diagnosed with a serious heart condition. So tell me your origin story and how did you actually build out of this huge challenge and obstacle that you had, the kind of life that you are teaching others right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for asking that. Yeah, I would say probably the ones who are harder than me, I would think at many points is my parents, because I was the kid, right? I was a kid. I was diagnosed at 4, when at the time was considered a terminal diagnosis with heart. A lot of research had not been done yet at that time. We're talking about like the late 70s, early 80s. So there was not really much information on heart disease for women, much less on kids. Kids just don't get heart disease, right? I mean, if there's anything, it's like a structural thing. In mine, it was where my heart would go suddenly really fast into tachycardia, but it would also be arrhythmic, which would be abnormal rhythms. It was unexpected. It could be just, I'm just talking to you, I sneeze, and then poof, it would just go into tachycardia, or I'm in the middle sleeping and I turn the wrong way, it would start going into that tachycardia. And that would be like, think about normal resting heart rate is between the 60s to 80s. Well, for me, a normal heart rate would be anywhere from 180 to 240. So basically, like on like that zone 5, what y'all are feeling when you're working out, that's what my heart would be as a kid. But it wouldn't just be for like a few minutes. It could last hours, days. And to the extreme, it lasted weeks. And drugs didn't work for it. Interventions didn't work. I've had at the age of 10, actually, what was significant at that time is I went through 2 heart attacks. That's really what really both a miracle and what opened the door. I think always our greatest opportunities are always surrounded by the greatest of circumstances and obstacles. And as much as painful as that whole experience was, it also opened the door for my parents to courageously uproot our family, come to the US in search of a cure that didn't yet exist. And it was a journey for about 5 years. Nothing really in sight as far as hey, if we do this, this will happen. If we do that. Again, it was a lot of the things that happened were research. It was going on hope. And that's where my lessons came in, because I got to see very intelligent, dedicated professionals really rely not only on skills, but really on hope. They really believed a lot in me. They believed a lot on what my heart was capable of doing. I want to say my doctor was relentless. Though I was in the heart transplant list, where it would have given me about 10 years more at that time. I would have made it most 22 years old, assuming that everything went well. He was relentless in believing in that, no, my heart as well, the muscle, it was the electrical system that didn't work. So in 1992, there was an opportunity for an innovative surgery called a heart ablation. And that's where they basically did a recircuiting. They did the circuits in my heart, burning away parts that were making those fast heartbeats, being able to identify those, and having a clear pathway to then energy was able to flow. And ever since then, I've been well. So I'm here. I am well in the heart in a sense. I think with having 5 kids, they did a really good job because I'm still here. You know, the kids will cause a lot of stress and being an entrepreneur itself. But that's where my story started. A lot of things I couldn't do. My childhood obviously was very different. You know, things like that were simple. Going to school, getting up, getting dressed, there were not options for me many times. I lived tied to a bed for weeks. I lived in the CCU, the cardiac care unit, for many weeks, months at a time. And that's where I learned actually the beat method. That's where I learned. That's why I say, regardless of the circumstance, as a kid, you don't understand. I didn't understand all it meant. I didn't even understand when I had the surgery until 20 years later when they called me to do a documentary on it. And that's when I realized that I was the first of 3,000 children that were impacted by this innovative surgery that saved their lives.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And what's even more amazing to me is that out of this experience, you built your business. It's called Heartnomics, the
Yeah,
economy of the heart. And
yeah,
then you have several frameworks which are revolve around the heart. And one of the frameworks I want to ask you about is the heart framework itself, which is a values-based leadership framework. So can you tell our audience about what that is and how did you come up with it? Why did you come up with it?
yeah.
And what does it look like?
Yeah, well, like I said, as a kid, there were a lot of things I was just felt like they were happening to me, right? Like there was just like all this thing, like I didn't really have much of like an option on stuff. And I didn't understand all the innuendos, but I did understand how people did things. And that how later on in life I came to understand that those were values. Those were values that people dealt with. And that's where the heart, the values based leadership, it wasn't just something that I learned with me. It was I learned in observing when words weren't there, words weren't even, I wasn't even able to understand. Values led how they did things, the things that they did do. And as I went on in my own leadership journey, I've been able to observe with those leaders that have high values are also leaders that are high performers and leaders that really make that impact and influence. And when I came down to really looking at what are those values that really impacted me, that's where heart comes from. The value of hope, the value of empowerment, accountability, results, and trust. Because I would see that all those 5 in how we do and the things that we choose to do and how we perform them. If you don't have result in mind of what I'm doing that I'm doing, you could just be a very busy person and being an effective person. If you don't have trust, you're not going to be an ethical leader. And we need ethics and leadership. Accountability is not just about holding really anybody like a punitive thing, but accountability really talks about community because you can't be accountable outside of being in a community. And we're talking about the empowerment, really not just bringing solutions to the people, but bringing ownership to the people that we lead so that we can come up with those solutions together, which definitely feeds back into hope. The first part, which is the beginning, I believe is a catalyst for change, but also the fuel that helps you keep on going, even in light of things not working quite out. And that's where the values, that's where the heart framework really
Mm.
birthed out from.
So I love it. So the heart is really the acronym. So H for hope, E empowerment, A accountability, R resource, and T
Results.
trust. You also already explained empowerment, accountability, and trust. I'd like to ask you about the other two, hope and resource. So first of all, hope. How do you create hope? How do you tap into hope? Is there a process? Is it something an inborn thing? Is it something that evolved in us due to our experiences or environment that maybe contributed to your hope? How do people manufacture hope?
Well, I believe we all are born with that hope. I mean, I see that as with having had 5 kids. They always have like, they're hopeful in a sense. It comes out as a wish. They think it's a wish. Sometimes people confuse a wish as a hope or like a positive thinking, but really hope, it is a powerful force because hope, what it does is that it really makes you find a way where there is no way. I realize that sometimes, as I went through my life and things that I said, well, I just don't have time for this, or I don't have time for that. I realized that it wasn't a matter of time management. It was that I had even lost hope in those areas. So I see that areas where I didn't have hope were also areas that I was not looking for a solution or a way to improve. I believe that how do you grow in it? Well, one is identifying, right? What are some of those areas? You'll find that those areas where you're focusing on, where you're believing in, you also find that those are areas that you have high hope on. In those areas that maybe you haven't thought in a while, it's like, well, maybe is it because you lost hope in that? Because you did try it, or you gotta put it away, put it to the side. But hope is a catalyst because hope will help you move into action. It is not passive at all. It's not just this great old feeling. It's honestly a skill for leaders to be able to not only start looking for solutions. I mean, look at that area. I know it's not what it's supposed to be like. I couldn't deny how I was feeling when I was going through my heart. My doctors couldn't deny that all the drugs and the open heart surgery and those things just didn't work. But we can still speak hope, and hope came in when we were still looking for a solution in light of no solution. When I still chose to live as much a life that I could, even from my bed, because I was hopeful that there will be a time where things will be better, where I could even make that time better. I mean, I would play with different things and hope that's what will make you do. It will move you into action. It will start helping you look at the circumstances differently. It's the start. Uh,
What catalyzes hope? Because some people are hopeful because they have a strong spiritual belief
yes.
and they hope in God, for example, that God's going to help me, and that allows them to have hope even in a situation which is maybe hopeless. Or some people have a strong belief in something, like they are fighting for their country, and that gives them a hope. This bigger goal that they're pursuing gives them hope. Some people are very curious, and maybe the curiosity tells them that there is something that they don't know that they can still find, and it gives them hope. How do you catalyze hope? Is it an inborn thing that some people are more hopeful than others, or is it something that can be cultivated?
Well, both. I do believe it is divinely ingrained in us. I mean, the object of my hope is my divine maker, God, and he's the author of hope for me. I also believe that we can grow in it. It is nurtured. We can raise in hope, and we see that. I mean, even we going to the Bible scriptures, it commands us to, like, raise up your own fire. You raise up in hope. You bring out that encouragement. So it definitely is both ingrained in us. You see it in different, really a universal theme. How hope is not only internal, where you can turn it on, grow in it, but also it is fueled by others. And like what you were saying, like, even in areas that you're looking at, when you start hearing hope will raise, which is what is so important for a leader in organizations, is to raise hope. Now, we're not talking about false expectations. We're talking about in light of, like I said, like, hey, I know this is what it looks like right now, but it's not the end of the story. It's not how this finishes. There's a mission, there's a vision, there's greatness. And of course, the part of faith goes with hope. I mean, there's a lot of why we do what we do. We're operating in faith. And you can say faith, it could be from the way that you have seen things in the past, but really faith is also, I believe, also divinely ingrained that can be grown in. I mean, we can grow and nurture faith. We can nurture hope. We can nurture love the same way. Love comes in, again, I believe 100% from our maker.
But there's also, I think, and I'm not a scholar, but I think there's a line in the Bible which paraphrase something like, "Help yourself, and God will also help you." Let's say in a business situation, your business is being disrupted, and you see that AI is going to eat your business, and you kind of become despondent, and then you rack your brain. What can I do? How can I avoid it? How can I pivot my business? Then a couple of days later, you have an idea, and then you have hope. This idea will give you hope that you can pivot your business and you can take it further. Then you really are helping yourself. so that you can get God's support as well.
Oh
In
yeah, I mean yeah, absolutely. There's a part where it says, you do all you cannot, all that you can do, and God will do all you cannot do. I mean, so you do what you can, but we rely on that He will do all that we cannot do. I mean, way beyond above what we can think or imagine. So absolutely, we do what we can, and that's to a certain point, right? I mean, like, for example, there's a lot of times even with goals, right? Like we set out goals, and as much as you may want to, like, okay, maybe it's like a financial goal or a health goal, whatever that is. We really are not in charge of that outcome. We are in charge of the activities that will lead to that outcome. Like I can control what if I set a health goal on what I put in my body, I can control on, like how much rest do I give. I can control those things. Now the overall health, that's really where I'm trusting that my activity along with divine health is gonna be that, right? Same thing with income. There's only so much I can do. Like, but am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing the phone calls? Am I getting myself, keeping up with my skill? Am I making pitches? Am I making sales calls? Those things. Again, I can't control somebody buying from me, but I can control the activities that will allow people to buy from me.
Yeah,
So that and
great.
relying in that divine part.
That's a great way of stating it. Okay, so got it. I understand hope. What about resource?
Results. So results, yeah.
Resource, not resource. Okay.
Yeah, no, results goes to there has to be an outcome to the activity, right? There has to be a way we're measuring. A lot of times I hear like, well, we want the world to be a better place, for example, better. Well, better for what? Results is a way to be able to, as a leader, to quantify what maybe we only can, what maybe a concept or what maybe like, what is it going to be? What's the end result? There has to be a way that I can measure, from that qualitative data to the quantitative data, right? From things that we say that are mission critical. What is that? How do I know I am closer to that mission? How do I know I am closer to that purpose? How do I know with that? So results very much also deals with alignment. So as a value is that I'm not just going to do things for the sake of doing them, but I'm going to do things intentionally. I'm going to do things purposefully, and the purpose can be measured. The intentionality can be tracked. Those things like, I don't just say I'm intentional. Well, there's a tracker to that. Okay. How do I, how am I
Can
going
you
to
give an example how you track intentionality?
Absolutely. So every morning I'm gonna do 20 minutes of meditation, right? It's like I'm having, well, my intentionality actually may not even be 20 minutes. That would be my goal. Intentionality is to have time where I'm setting my day up correctly. Well, that's my intention. I need to, okay, well, how do I do that? Well, maybe starting that before I do anything else. So my intentionality is then transferred into something that I do, like something like, or either what I think, or how am I going to make sure that I'm gonna get in the right mindset to start my day. Well, I'm gonna have to get up early. I could have to do it early in the morning. So I have 5 kids, for example. They wake up at different times. They're waking up at different times. If I was going to really be intentional, and this is where the rubber meets the road for the results, am I willing to get up before everybody else so I can have that time? So intentionality is not just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do and hope all this stuff, but the result attached with that. I mean, being able to transfer that intentionality to it is actually preparing. Like I started looking, okay, if I'm going to be intentional with this, I also am aware of some of the obstacles that come in, but I need to put in something in place to measure that intentionality to where maybe I don't get all 7 days, but maybe 5 days, 3 days. But I'm taking that from one dimension to the other. In results, when you are committed to results, there is intentionality with that. Is, not just putting in, this is what we're going to do. This is the amount of money we're going to bring in, or this is how the feeling is going to come out. But in results, you're also realizing, well, what is the intention and what are the activities that I need to do with that? And it has to be transferred to something. Maybe 3 times a day, a week is not enough for me. And I have to measure that at the end of the week. Maybe I do need to up it up 4. Or maybe, you know what? With one, I'm good. So I don't need to be killing myself 3 days. I just need to do one time. So that is dealing with, like, as my intention as I'm going out and trying it out, but I'm also looking at the results because we have greatest of intentions, right? But the smallest of action is going to trample the greatest of intention.
Uh,
So it's not just about being intentional and having this feeling. You have to be able to translate that into something else, and that the result is going to help
Yeah.
you
And
dictate
then
that.
if you don't measure the results, then maybe your intention may dissipate
Oh,
because
yeah,
you have nothing to reinforce it with.
absolutely.
And then you're gonna lose it. But what's really important is really interesting to me is the way you talk about intention and hope. There's a lot of emotional juice behind this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about rational plans and systems and processes and logic and structure, but it's also the emotional charge that is required. So hope is emotion. It's you feel that it's gonna get better. It fuels you. Nationality, if you really are committed to doing this thing, getting up and making this happen, it's an emotional charge that you have. And even trust, it is an emotional connection that you have the intention to build that bond with the other person, to trust them, and then they can trust you in return, because it has to be a two-way street. Do I get this somewhat right, or
Yeah.
something?
No, absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, for example, like well, today is January, we're at the beginning of January, but the job reports came out. What is that supposed to do? Yeah, it's a very quantitative thing, but really what it measures is confidence. It's all about confidence. Confidence is an emotion. So the volatility that's going to come from that, the confidence that you either have or don't have in whatever it is, the system that you do have or don't have, is really going to dictate the next actions that you're gonna do. So yes, it's definitely very emotional charge. So you can have, and we have a very structured way to may portray or communicate something. Yet, it's the emotion, right? You talk about trust and in business. Absolutely. Who do we do business with? With whom we like, know, and trust. Trust in sales is an exchange of emotion. I'm selling you a benefit. Like, oh, we look at advertising, we look at things. So yes, there is the emotional very much component attached to that, even at the as the confidence levels. The confidence is gonna if we degrade the confidence in what we do, the economy, the faster we're gonna move, the more we may invest. So there's an action that's followed with that. But yes, definitely we're emotional beings. It is a language that we speak. So yes, all of these are going to be attached with emotion along with the organizational part. And that's really where Heartnomics came in, that mixture of both. It's heart, the emotional part, that what we value the assets, but then the economy, the economy of the heart, which is the systems, the way that we measure things, the processes, the reports, all of these parts, because it is an economy of the heart.
Love it. That's really interesting. This concept of emotion and the machine, essentially the spirit, the human spirit, and the system coming together and creating the result.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've been in business for a long time. You're also teaching. In business, what was the hardest decision that you ever had to make in your business?
I think in businesses, there's seasons to everything. So I think the hardest decision would be, I mean, my hardest decision at the beginning was, well, just to get started. That was sometimes like the hardest decision, right? Like, okay, can I do this on my own? Is somebody going to go forward? So sometimes that seemed at that time, it seemed like the hardest decision ever. Like, am I going to leave this to go after this? Later on in the business, like staying like, okay, well, everybody else is going this way. Do I need to follow everybody else, or do I keep on doing what I'm doing? Am I being completely blindsided by my passion and what I believe it is, in a sense of stubbornness? So sometimes I would say like the hardest decisions have been and really identifying and clarifying the purpose of what it is that I do in light of consistent change. I came to find that I think I would say at the one that had the initial biggest ripple effect was when I was in my previous company, when I had the publishing company. And we had to really look at, there was this whole battle of content versus platform when you had the rise of the ebooks versus the print books, right? To where suddenly what was so valued, which was the printed book, the knowledge, suddenly the knowledge part seemed to have lost its value because knowledge was everywhere. by everyone. So you saw things happening, for example, with Britannica, the encyclopedia, to where people, that's where you would get knowledge from, to suddenly having Wikipedia, where people wouldn't pay for. And it was like added by anybody. So the curation part. So it's like, well, what do we do? Do we develop, or go into platform development, or do we go into content development? Do we still stay true? And the hardest decision was really in having to, not only in taking the time when it seemed like everybody's going 100 miles per hour, to really, in a sense, shut everything off and get back in touch with, well, what is our core? What is it that we're here for? I see that a lot in business owners today with the rise of AI, with the rise of all this technology. It's like going super fast, the speed of change. And it's like, do we need to change the way we do business altogether? Like everything. Do we even, is there even value in what we do? Because now technology tools are doing the work that we say we do. So I would say the hardest part is really getting down to slowing down enough and listening, turning up your listening ears enough in a time where it seems like you can't afford to do so, to be able to move forward. Because I know for me, it seemed like, oh my goodness, we're losing ground. If we stop right now, at the speed of everybody, but actually in the slowing down is what really gave birth to the next phase of what we needed to do. And I've seen that again and again.
And sometimes it can be an unleashing of something because often we get comfortable doing something and we stop learning because we are
Yes.
successful. We are not being pushed. And then a disruption comes. And then we have to really have some soul searching and go back to the roots, what we are really about. And that can release the next level of evolution. From basically, it's the yin and yang. So the danger is the opportunity. That,
Always.
yeah.
Always. That's what I said, like, like the greatest of your greatest opportunity is usually surrounded by the greatest of opposition, challenges, all this stuff. I mean, like I say, even with me, that's what I saw with my with the surgery, right? That innovative surgery. It hadn't been done before. I mean, we had a whole track record of failure. Everything around it was failure. And yet you had to look at that, there was still an opportunity, and that opportunity honestly unleashed just a way that even heart disease is treated today. But there had to be the opportunity, there had to be the pioneers, there had to be the ones that were willing to go, and the ones that are willing to also, there is a price for being first. We see that in the marketplace. Those that are first, even with AI and even with all those things, there is a price for being first, but yet that cannot be at the sacrifice of everything else you've done and forget who you are. I think that's honestly the biggest challenge in all of this that we're doing is not losing your identity and the governance of it all, where it's still the human is the one who's governing. The human is still the one who's using the tool and using it as a tool. But the human is the one that we're the ones that have the authority. We're the creators.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. So we are the creators, we are the governors of things, and they are just a tool. It's an amplifier. It
Yes.
changes the nature of the work. It turns the work from execution oriented to creation oriented, really,
Yes.
which can be uplifting but also burdensome.
Oh, yes, and that's where we are. I believe we're the guardians of that, right? I mean, that's where leadership comes in, because in leadership, you are able to you do set out clarity. That's one of the greatest things that we do. The way we serve as leaders, we also protect, we also guide, we also do all these things, and ethics is a big part. That's something that the machines don't understand. They can't do. We only understand what we put it in there at that point, but the whole point of ethics is like good. We have this inner knowing again, the divine in us of what is not just works, but what is good works. And that is also where we still and will have a role to play on the ethical, being a leader that leads by ethic, integrity. Not only integrity in how we do things, the process, but integrity of who we are, the whole part of being, which is not something you can, again, just teach a tool. The tool helps with that, like you say, amplify. The tool helps with even helping unleash and create. I know there's things that we can definitely do faster, but we can't lose the opportunity of the opening that tool allows us to be able to create even more, to be able to add value even more in a different way.
Yeah, and I think when you say ethics, I'm thinking that it's how it manifests is doesn't it manifest through being aligned with our values
Yes.
and knowing our values so that we can align ourselves? Because I see people who are not aware of the values that are dear to them. They don't articulate it, and then they get confused and they feel frustrated, but they don't know why, and they can't align with it because it's not explicit. So, yeah, it's
Start
never
with heart.
easy. You're something
That's just a values-based leadership is heart.
yeah,
Exactly
yeah.
why.
That's basically it. You know, heart-based leadership is probably value-aligned leadership is another way of saying it, right?
Yes.
Also, yeah, emotionally resonant leadership.
Yeah, I mean, we're emotional beings, and all these tools again, like the stock market is very much driven by emotion. Like you see what happens when you're in fear, when people start selling off is fear. You know, we have the whole again the confidence. We have a barometer, like the Elderman barometer of trust. Is all it does is to measure trust. We talk about morale. We talk about and that trust, the barometer of trust, is used to lending practices. Is it how people feel about organizations, how people feel about things. So you think about that, we cannot ignore emotion, like the humanness of being human as we're moving forward in innovation. And that is a call to the human centric and valuing something that we say in Maxwell. One of our core beliefs is that we are people of value that value others and add value to them. So in utilizing these tools, in integrating the tools as a leader, is how are they adding value to the human? Because it still has to be human centric. We're still selling products to the human, and AI is not gonna buy. I mean, they're not the
You don't have
consumer.
AI doesn't have emotion, or at least I'm not aware of it. Maybe the newest ChatGPT 6.0 will have emotion. I don't know, but currently, maybe that's a big difference. That AI doesn't have emotion, so it doesn't have that energy, and maybe that's the spiritual energy, and who knows what where this comes from, and that is a big driver of human decisions and desires and intentionality, and it's not just about the tokens and the logic and the ideas and the information. It's also about this energy, this emotion, and we bring this to the table, and
Yeah.
AI cannot do this yet
Yeah.
anyhow.
No, and let me tell you something. When I went to the documentary, when they did a 20-year anniversary for my surgery, and they were interviewing the doctor, they did actually, they connected me back to my nurse. They connected me to the person that was there that checked me in. I got to go see the surgery room, and then I got to hear the doctor really for the first time. Now as an adult, now as a mom, and it's like they asked him, "Well, what was going on?" You know, like first of all, he said, what were the odds of this working? He said, "Well, imagine yourself, you're in a pitch black room and you're trying to find out one little switch. It's gonna turn the light on, but wait a minute, the room is spinning at the same time." He said that was the odds of this happening, of it being successful. And he said it was like that. It was just like a miracle that just happened in front of them, where they were able to get to the right spot to do that. And I mean, that was the first time where I actually saw not only the logical part, right, as a doctor as a skill, but he also called it the medical miracle. Is definitely their hands were divinely guided. But not only that did he say, he also added this other part that he said, "Well, what were you doing with her this whole time?" I said, "We were just hoping, we were just trying to keep her alive long enough for technology to catch up." And that's where it hit me as I'm hearing this. It's like, and if I was to say what was the birth of Heartnomics, that was it. Because I'm like, well, what kept me alive long enough? It was love. That's what sustained me. That's what the love of my grandmother as I was going through this agonizing pain. My parents, their courage that it took to do what they did, it was love. But what was it for technology to catch up? Well, that was the logic. That was the systems. That was the processes. That was looking at failure and learning from those failures. It was a way to be able to catch what they were learning and changing it next time, and catching and failing and catching and failing. That was the technology helped do that. So it was like the both parts. And that's why even as we look at, there is a logical aspect to what we do. It's a process and systems, but it's not all of it, because it is a combination of that. And it's the people that are willing to balance both. Like in my case, I was blessed that I had doctors that were able to say that, to advocate also for me, because it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense keeping me alive long enough. Logically, I shouldn't have been alive or still be alive or still be alive for that. So we couldn't just go by what logic said. But love was such a more powerful force. And it sustained me at a time where I couldn't be sustained, where there was no technology to sustain me. There was no medicine that would sustain me.
Yeah, and you are still projecting this. This is amazing. You have a lot of you're like a mini nuclear reactor. You're protecting this energy, this positive energy. I love it. I love it. I think it's going to shine through this episode. Final question: what do you think is the most important question that an entrepreneur should be asking themselves?
What question am I not asking myself? That's sometimes like the mistakes. You know what? The biggest mistake, and you probably heard this, the biggest mistake that we have is not asking what mistake am I making. So as an entrepreneur, I would say is being that, is that, because it takes a humility. So I would say that would be part. What the parts, I know we talk a lot about a grid and getting out there and all this stuff. And I understand that. Trust me, I get it. I also feel and I see that one of the greatest things with entrepreneurs right now, especially in the light of all the stuff that we have, is that humbleness that has to come, because without humbleness, we won't listen to the ideas of our great teams. Without humbleness, we won't be open to the great possibilities. Without humbleness, we won't be able to look at our mistakes and not be afraid of them, but embrace them for what they are. And they are all steps and lessons to the process.
Yeah, and it can be very painful to look at
Yes,
the mistakes. Right.
very. If you've ever done a SWOT analysis, they are brutal. And like, when you're looking at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. I remember doing that with my team, like, oh, it's a great team building. Feel like it was a nuclear war. It's horrible, but we got through it. So yes, one of the greatest services that we can do as a leader, and it takes humbleness to do it. It takes humbleness to take a look at this, and it's going to take that love, honestly, to look at this at the way that things are, and bring out that hope that is going to help you get through and get to that next innovative part, because we need innovation. And innovation doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a brand new thing, like never been done before, like a new invention. For example, my surgery wasn't a new invention. It was just using the same technique of burning away, but using it a different way. And that's what I would call my entrepreneurs. Don't think that you have to reinvent the wheel or reinvent something. But what do you have that maybe if used a different way,
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah.
innovative?
New combination of existing things. There's nothing new under the sun. Uh,
Yeah.
Love it. Well, so if someone would like to learn more about Heartnomics and your work and maybe want to explore working with you or connect with you, where should they go? Where can they find you?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, to connect with me, best way is to go through LinkedIn. You can look me up there in Hannah Bauer. Also on my website, I have a special assessment for you for aligning with your individual alignment. It's based on heart, and also for the organizations that is based on the core of the organization. So I would love to have you there, take a complimentary assessment, and then we'll connect.
That's awesome. So if you like this conversation, you liked the Heartnomics ideas and the love that is radiating through it, then go and check out Hannah Bauer's website and LinkedIn page. Check out the self-assessment, reach out to her. And if you enjoyed this show, then make sure you subscribe on YouTube, you follow us on LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. And stay tuned, because every week I bring an exciting thought leader, entrepreneur to the show like Hannah Bauer. Hannah, thanks for coming and sharing, and thank you for listening.
That's it for this episode. Keep moving your business forward. Subscribe at stevebreda.com/newsletter.